Live on the streaming. Okay, let me get it started over here. Okay, I guess we're ready. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we are going to start a brand spanking new paper in the Urantia Book, paper 144 at Gilboa and the Decapolis. And this is the paper it goes over the Lord's Prayer. So it's a very interesting, very good paper. And so let me advance the screen here a little bit and we will get started. And Diane, you're up first. Unmute there.
Just got my paper 144 at Gilboa and then the Decapolis.
Roger,
Yes.
Roger, can you mute?
Oh, I'm mute. I'm not.
Okay. September and October were spent in retirement at a secluded camp upon the slopes of Mount Gilboa. The month of September, Jesus spent here alone with his apostles, teaching and instructing them in the truths of the kingdom.
Oh, Roger, you're muted.
Muted again. So this first month.
What did we do without you?
Yeah, really. September, October, both were spent on Mount Gilboa, and this is where we're going to learn about the prayer thing. Okay, and here's a map of that I created years ago. And here's another one that's very interesting. This is a nice picture. You can look at that later, but you can see where it's got a little red thing here where the Decapolis is. Right? Okay, let's go on. There were a number of reasons why Jesus and his apostles were in retirement at this time on the borders of Samaria and Decapolis. The Jerusalem religious rulers were very antagonistic. Herod Antipas still held John in prison, fearing either to release or execute him. While he continued to entertain suspicions that John and Jesus were in some way associated, these conditions made it unwise to plan for aggressive work in either Judea or Galilee. There was a third reason: the slowly augmenting tension between the leaders of John's disciples and the apostles of Jesus, which grew worse with the increasing number of believers. Okay, so they were kind of at odds with each other. Okay, Pam, would you take the next one, please?
Jesus knew that the days of the preliminary work of teaching and preaching were about over, that the next move involved the beginning of the full and final effort of his life on earth, and he did not wish the launching of this undertaking to be in any manner either trying or embarrassing to John the Baptist. Jesus had therefore decided to spend some time in retirement rehearsing his apostles and then to do some quiet work in the cities of the Decapolis until John should be either executed or released, to join them in a united effort.
So this is interesting because if they had let John go, John and Jesus would have worked in concert with each other, which would have been interesting, wouldn't it? But
Yeah.
as we know, he was executed. All right, Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. 1. The Gilboa encampment. As time passed, the 12 became more devoted to Jesus and increasingly committed to the work of the kingdom. Their devotion was in large part a matter of personal loyalty. They did not grasp his many-sided teaching. They did not fully comprehend the nature of Jesus or the significance of his bestowal on earth.
So basically, they could not get the concept of the seventh bestowal, could they? They
No.
had nothing to relate it to, and Jesus tried to explain it to them that this is his seventh appearance as a being, in his own local universe. And so they did not understand the bestowal and the significance of what Jesus was doing in the bestowal experience in his life on earth. So they were totally unplused. And this is understanding because people still don't understand this today, do they? And that's the reason I wrote the book, Jesus, Who, What, When, and Where, right? Because the understanding of the bestowal, the process of the bestowal, sets you up for understanding the life of Jesus while he was on this planet. Okay, so that's what they're talking about. They couldn't grasp this. All right, Diane.
Jesus made it plain to his apostles that they were in retirement for three reasons. One, to confirm their understanding of and faith in the gospel of the kingdom. Two, to allow opposition to their work in both Judea and Galilee to quiet down. Three, to await the fate of John the Baptist.
And notice in this third one, Jesus was determined to let John's life work out its own effect in its own way. He was not going to interfere, right?
Yeah.
And that's important to understand because at any time Jesus could have spent angels to free John just like it was nothing. Okay, so it's important to kind of understand that. Plus the fact that Jesus wanted to make sure they understood what the gospel of the kingdom was, so that there would be no misunderstanding, which happened after Pentecost with Paul, right? I mean, it took the gospel off the tracks completely when they changed the gospel to about Jesus instead of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. All right. And of course the middle one, the second one, the opposition to quiet down because they were getting pretty popular and he did not want them to get into that position. Okay. I guess I'm up next, huh? While tarrying on Gilboa, Jesus told the 12 much about his early life and an experience on Mount Hermon. He also revealed something of what happened in the hills during the 40 days immediately after his baptism. He directly charged them that they should tell no man about these experiences until after he had returned to the Father after his death. All right. Pam, would you take the next one?
During these September weeks, they rested, visited, recounted their experience since Jesus first called them to service, and engaged in an earnest effort to coordinate with the Master what the Master had so far taught them. In a measure, they all sensed that this would be their last opportunity for prolonged rest. They realized that their next public effort in either Judea or Galilee would mark the beginning of the final proclamation of the coming kingdom, but they had little or no settled idea as to what the kingdom would be when it came. John and Andrew thought the kingdom had already come. Peter and James believed that it was yet to come. Nathaniel and Thomas were frankly confessed they were puzzled. Matthew, Philip, and Simon Zealots were uncertain and confused. The twins were blissfully ignorant of the controversy, and Judas Iscariot was silent, non-committal.
Non-committal. He didn't commit to it.
Non-committal.
Yeah, he didn't commit to anything. All right, Rodney.
Blissfully ignorant.
Blissfully ignorant, what the twins, right? Yeah.
Much of this time, Jesus was alone on the mountain near the camp. Occasionally, he took with him Peter, James, or John, but more often he went off to pray or commune alone. Subsequent to the baptism of Jesus and the 40 days in the Perean hills, it is hardly proper to speak of these seasons of communion with his Father as prayer, nor is it consistent to speak of Jesus as worshiping, but it is altogether correct to allude to these seasons as personal communion with his Father.
And we can relate to this in many ways because we know sometimes we just sit around to ourselves and we have discussions with God, even though God didn't talk back. We let God know how we're feeling and what's going on, that sort of thing. And this is not really prayer. This is just communication. Okay.
Mhm.
And he did the same thing. Now, sometimes we worship God, and that's totally different mindset than to just sit around and talk to God, you know. So that's what they're trying to stress here is there's different ways to communicate with the Father. Gary, how you doing? Could you take the next?
Okay.
But it makes you wonder if being there's a creator son, if the Father actually communed with him.
It's possible, Rodney. Very possible, because his level of understanding was so much greater than ours, he probably even as a human even though he, I kind of cut off his divinity side, but you would think still he would have that connection,
Mhm.
so Gary, would you take the next one?
Okay. The central theme of the discussions throughout the entire month of September was prayer and worship. After they had discussed worship for some days, Jesus finally delivered his memorable disclosure on prayer and answer.
Discourse. He talked about it.
Yeah, discourse. Okay,
Yes.
he blabbed. Um, Doggone it, on prayer in answer to Thomas's request, Master, teach us how to pray.
All right.
Mm.
Okay, Gary.
Me? You want me? Oh, you're talking to Diane?
You're not dear.
Jeez, thank you.
John had taught his disciples a prayer, a prayer for salvation in the coming kingdom. Although Jesus never forbade his followers to use John's form of prayer, the apostles very early perceived that their master did not fully approve of the practice of uttering set and former prayers. Nevertheless, believers constantly requested to be taught how to pray. The 12 belonged to know what form of petition Jesus would approve. And it was chiefly because of this need for some simple petition for the common people that Jesus at this time consented in answer to Thomas's request to teach them a suggestive form of prayer. Jesus gave this lesson one afternoon in the third week of their sojourn on Mount Gilboa.
You're
This is
muted.
probably a good point to explain why we did the prayer of acceptance, right? It's not we didn't do it because we wanted to make a formal prayer. We wanted to lead people into how to state a belief in what we teach, right? It's really a prayer of acceptance of the concepts that we teach and believe that salvation is not received by sacrifice, and that the fact that Jesus is the Son of God and the creator of our local universe. All right. This is why, and this is how we come to him in our prayer. All right. Discourse on prayer. Next.
Me?
Yep, I believe so. No, I'm up next.
Oh, okay.
I skipped right over that old guy, right? The discourse on prayer. John indeed taught you a simple form of prayer. O Father, cleanse us from sin, show us your glory, reveal your love, and let your spirit sanctify our hearts forevermore. Amen. He taught this prayer that you might have something to teach the multitude. He did not intend that you should use such a set and formal petition as the expression of your own soul's prayer. Okay, and that's pretty clear, right? Okay, Pam.
Mhm. Prayer is entirely a personal and spontaneous expression of the attitude of the soul toward the Spirit. Prayer should be the communion of sonship and the expression of fellowship. Prayer, when intended by the Spirit,
Indicted by the
Indicted.
Spirit.
thank
Yeah.
you, indicted by the Spirit, leads to cooperative spiritual progress. The ideal prayer is a form of spiritual communion which leads to intelligent worship. True praying is the sincere attitude of reaching heavenward for the attainment of your ideals.
So really, prayer comes from within, right? It's our deepest longing spiritually and our deepest spiritual communication with God the Father, any way you look at it.
Hmm.
All right, Rodney.
Looks like Gary's.
I was just thinking, you're the new Rodney, you're the new Gary now.
It looks like it. Prayer is the breath of the soul and should lead you to be persistent in your attempt to ascertain the Father's will. If any one of you has a neighbor and you go to him at midnight and say, "Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine on a journey has come to see me, and I have nothing to set before him." And if your neighbor answers, "Trouble me not, for the door is now shut, and the children and I are in bed. Therefore I cannot rise and give you bread," you will persist, explaining that your friend hungers and that you have no food to offer him. I say to you, though your neighbor will not rise and give you bread because he is your friend, yet because of your importunity, he will get up and give you as many loaves as you need. If then persistence will win favors even from mortal man, how much more will your persistence in the Spirit win the bread of life for you from the willing hands of the Father in heaven? Again, I say to you, ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, the door of salvation will be opened.
Okay, and we're all talking about all the way through this paragraph, salvation. We're not talking about bread here, are we? We're talking about the bread of life. We're talking about salvation itself. So if you ask for salvation, of course, the Father will grant it to you, especially if you're persistent in it. All right. Gary, will you take the next one?
Which of you who is a father, if his son asks unwisely, would hesitate to give in accordance with parental wisdom and rather than the terms of the son's faulty petition? If the child needs a loaf, will you give him a stone just because he unwisely asked for it? If your son needs a fish, will you give him a water snake just because it might chance to come up in the net with the fish and the child foolishly asks for the serpent? If you then bring mortal and finite,
Being for
Being,
mortal and
yeah, didn't, yeah. If you then, being mortal and finite, know how to answer prayer and give good and appropriate gifts to your children, how much more shall your heavenly Father give the Spirit and many additional blessings to those who ask him, man ought always to pray and not become discouraged.
Pray always, but do not get discouraged over your prayers if you do not get what you want right away.
I think you said this once that God gives you what you want if it's appropriate for you and when it's time.
When it's inappropriate.
Let me tell you the story of a certain judge who lived in a wicked city. This judge feared not God nor had respect for man. Now there was a needy widow in that city who came repeatedly to this unjust judge, saying, "Protect me from my adversary." For some time he would not give ear to her, but presently he said to himself, "Though I fear not God nor have regard for man, yet because this widow ceases not to trouble me, I will vindicate her, lest she wear me out by her continual coming." These stories I tell you to encourage you to persist in praying and not to intimidate that your petitions will change the just and righteous Father above. Your persistence, however, is not to win favor with God, but to change your earth attitude and to enlarge your soul's capacity for spirit receptivity.
Hey, Roger, can you explain that last sentence?
Yes, I was just getting ready to do that. The whole idea here is you are not asking God continuously over and over for spiritual things to break him down and win favor with God, but it gives your own soul the opportunity. What he says here is spirit receptivity. So by asking for these things over and over again, it enlarges your capacity for reception of what it is you need, not exactly what it is you're asking for. Right? So the wisdom of God changes your petition from what you think you need to what you actually need. And this is the work of the thought adjuster too, right? When the thought adjuster communicates you when you're asleep or at night or whatever, it is changing your spiritual reality every night on every decision you make into a spiritual receptivity or a spiritual reality that's going to benefit you not only now but way into the future. So what Jesus is talking about is be persistent. Ask God what you think you need over and over again, but it allows you by doing this to enlarge your receptivity capacity for that spiritual gift in which God decides to give you. Make sense?
It helps mature your soul
Mature your thought and mature your thoughts too,
and your
right?
thoughts.
Because we're so scatterbrains when we start asking God for things, we don't really know what it is we need. We just start asking for things because we think we need them. In reality, the things we need are the spiritual things, and most of the time, on the average person does not even know how to ask for the spiritual benefits or the spiritual gifts that God has to bestow on us. Okay? That's part of that communication with the thought adjuster, which I go into great detail in this book I'm working on. Y'all will enjoy this because I've taken the lessons that I've already taught y'all and expanded them in the book into more reasonable things that you can use daily in your life if you apply them properly. So, but you got to read carefully. It's not like I normally talk. I write differently than I talk. So, okay. I don't say right all the time. I don't think there's a single right in the whole book so far. So,
Right?
all right, let's go on. Who's next here? I think it's Rodney, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
But when you pray, You exercise so little faith. Genuine faith will remove mountains of material difficulty which may chance to lie in the path of soul expansion and spiritual progress.
Did y'all catch that? Faith will remove mountains of what? Material difficulty. Okay. So when you pray, it actually affects the material welfare of whatever it is you're working on. Okay. So that's important because it's in the material world we're living right now. It's not the spiritual world we're living right now. So we have to deal with the material difficulties to get the spiritual benefits. All right.
So, yes, you messed me up. I understood that the prayer is for faith and
It is.
spiritual things,
It is.
and it doesn't affect the material world.
It does affect the material world in the where you live in it if you're doing spiritual work. Okay.
Oh, okay. If you're doing spiritual work, but if you was like working on the lawnmower, and you say, make a
Yeah.
prayer, the repair of the lawnmower, not going to happen.
Not going to happen. God's not Santa Claus, right? I say that over and over again. I even stated it in my book today or yesterday when I was working on it. God is not Santa Claus. He won't grant your wishes just because you think he should. All right. And you're going to be really disappointed if you go through life praying for material things that have nothing to do with your spiritual progress. But if you pray for things that have to do with your spiritual progress, you might be surprised of the things that jump out of your way. Okay. All right. So you
Hey,
can't
Roger,
limit God.
I think you skipped me.
Oh, did I? Well, let's get you right now.
Okay. 3, the believer's prayer. But the apostles were not yet satisfied. They desired Jesus to give them a model prayer, which they could teach the new disciples. After listening to this discourse on prayer, James Zebedee said, "Very good, Master, but we do not desire a form of prayer for ourselves so much as for the newer believers who so frequently beseech us. Teach us how acceptably to pray to the Father in heaven."
So it's not for us, it's for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
All right. See
I
that
think
little.
that was a con game, but what do you?
Yeah. Now I'm going to skip Rodney and go to to Gary. All right.
Okay. When James had finished speaking, Jesus said, "If then you still desire such a prayer, I would present the one which I taught my brothers and sisters in Nazareth. Are you ready? Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our bread for tomorrow. Refresh our souls with the water of life, and forgive us every one our debts. And as we also have forgiven our debtors. Save us in temptation, deliver us from evil, and increasingly make us perfect like yourself."
Okay.
That's a good ending.
It really is a good ending, but there's a few things I want to say as we go through this prayer that people kind of miss out on. All right. First of all, our Father who is in heaven. What are they talking about there?
The Heavenly Father.
Heavenly Father, and we're talking about paradise, right? Not just heaven. Their concept of heaven is like in the clouds, right? Okay. We're not talking about that, are we here? Jesus is talking about our Father. It would have probably been better to use paradise there. Our Father who is in paradise.
Or the heaven of heavens.
Or the heaven of heavens. That's right. Hallowed be thy name. What are they saying there? That God's name itself, by itself, is the most holy thing you can let come out of your mouth. Okay. All right.
Get me.
Your kingdom come. He's talking about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man coming throughout all the universes, right? And what's the most important thing in this sentence?
Your will
Will
be
be
done.
done.
Your will be done. That's right. On earth as it is in heaven. Now, this heaven is not the same heaven they're talking about in the first sentence, is it?
It's paradise.
Now, paradise was the first one, but this on earth as it is, he was probably more referring to the mansion worlds in this case.
Oh,
Okay, because what he's saying, he wants his will to become on earth as it is in the mansion worlds and all the worlds on the way to paradise. Okay, so just like it is everywhere else. All right. And then he goes on to say, give us our bread for tomorrow. In other words, we need our sustenance of life, okay, just to live, our material needs in our daily life. Refresh our souls with the water of life. What's the water of life? The Spirit of God.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's not refreshing yourself with real water, is it? Got nothing to do with real water. It's the water of life, that which springs from God the Father, the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit of truth. Okay. Um, then he goes on to say, forgive us our debts, uh, us every one of our debts as we forgive others. In other words, we have to treat others as we ourselves want to be treated. So the measure of our forgiveness is equal to how much we forgive someone else. So if you hold a grudge against someone else, how are you expected to be forgiven? Okay.
Mm.
So that's a pretty good lesson right in itself. All right. Save us in temptation. It does not say save us from temptation, does it?
deliver us
Deliver us from
temptation,
evil. That's right.
from evil.
Okay. What are we talking about here? God does not tempt us, does he? It's not saying that God is going to tempt us in any shape, form, or fashion. But when we are tempted, what does he say to ask for? Deliverance from that temptation or deliverance from evil. Okay. And then what's the final thing here? Make us perfect as you are perfect, like in yourself. Right.
Mhm.
And that's our goal as we go to paradise. By the time we hit paradise, we're expected to reach what? Perfection. And we'll do that as a sixth stage spirit.
Roger, I've got a question.
Yeah, go right ahead. You want me to go back or?
Sure.
Okay.
Hallowed be your name. The only name we know of God is I am.
I
Correct?
am. That's right.
Okay.
So really that what he's saying in essence, if you think about it, is hallowed be I am.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Temptation is not originating from the.
I'm sorry, Gary. Phone rang right as you was talking. Go ahead and say that again.
Okay. Temptation is not originating from Lucifer. Temptation originates from man in his
Own life.
own life. It's self-generated because we have a evil side.
Yes, that's exactly right, Gary. There's no temptation from the devil, right? None.
Mhm.
Lucifer and Satan are all in chains. All their influences are all probably in chains. The only one that was left over was Calagasta, but all the rebel spirits, all those beings were taken away at Pentecost.
Yeah.
Okay. The
My
only
question,
one that was left over was Calagasta. And they said that during the revealing of the book, he was probably taken away too. Okay.
Hmm.
So
So I can't blame the devil for making me do it.
you can't blame the devil. You can't blame your mother. You can't blame your father. You can't blame your brother or sister or dog or cat, or you can't even blame your bird if you got one. Okay. None of those beings tempt you. The temptation in your life comes from the evil within yourself in which you cultivate. And that evil within yourself, if you do not cultivate it, will not continue to grow. And eventually in your life, the evil in your life will disappear over time. You know, it's kind of funny that you know, writing this last book I've been working on has put me in touch with my concept of the thought adjuster all over again. Okay, in a different way than it had before, because I've grown over the last few years. With every year you grow, you get a little bit wiser. Hopefully, we get a little bit wiser. And the thing I've discovered is this: as you get wiser and you try to become more and more within the will of God and more perfect, these things of evil in your life disappear. They don't tempt you anymore
Well,
after a time.
Roger,
Yeah,
I remember reading, though, that Jesus taught us that evil is ignorance of the Father's will,
that's true.
being ignorant of his will,
Yeah.
just not knowing.
Not knowing it. It's not knowing it. It's the ignorance of it. Correct? That's what he's talking about. And the only way we can discover his will is what? Live our lives. It's funny because people expect God to talk to them all the time. Everyone always asks, well, do you hear God in your head? I mean, do you hear God to say things and stuff? And it's hard for us to understand that's not the way it works normally. Now, as you become more and more close to perfection, you will hear God in your head. But probably that won't happen until you're well into the mansion worlds. Okay. Unless you're getting ready to fuse in this life. And, what the secret of that is, I can't tell you yet. I've been looking for it my whole life. I've been going after that goal to where I could get to the point of fusion my whole life. I remember, y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but in 2011, when we first started meeting in the house and talking to each other, and I was talking about whether I was going to teach or not, during that period of time, I was obsessed with thought adjuster fusion. Okay. I read about it all the time. I thought about it all the time. And I was almost convinced that I was ready to fuse. Okay. But that just shows how stupid I am.
No, but maybe you have to stop thinking about it and let it happen.
That's right. Maybe so.
Yeah.
And maybe there were things to learn in my life that I was not wise enough at that point to understand, expect, or know. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's only through experience you get to that point, and that experience only happens through what? Age. And you can't hurry your age along, can you?
It's on the job training.
What was that, Rod?
On the job training.
It's on the job training. That's exactly right. And you can't get by it. There's no way by it, no matter what you do. Okay. And when you think you get to know pretty much everything you want to know, then something else comes along and you realize maybe I didn't know that as well as I thought I did. And I'm experiencing that right now and rewriting this book about the thought adjuster because I have to take my videos that I listened to when I taught y'all back, in 2023. I had to listen to them, reinterpret them in order to put them in the book format. And then not only that, after I get something written in some kind of manner, then I got to correct everything all over again and again and again. And that's the way our life is. When we think we got it down, what do we have to do? We have to go back and correct it again. And then probably we come back to it and we have to correct it again, right? This is the way life is. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of life, we've got a pretty good idea of what it is we were trying to say, right?
Yeah.
In our life. Hopefully. And that's one of the lessons of just age, of life itself. So, okay. Now, who's back up? I think Diane is, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is not strange that the apostles desired Jesus to teach them a model prayer for believers. John the Baptist had taught his followers several prayers. All great teachers and formulated prayers for their pupils. The religious teachers of the Jews had some 25 or 30 set prayers which they recited in the synagogues and even on the street corners. Jesus was particularly averse to praying in public. Up to this time, the 12 had heard him pray only a few times. They observed him spending entire nights at prayer or worship, and they were very curious to know the manner or form of his petitions. They were really hard pressed to know what to answer the multitudes when they asked to be taught how to pray to John, as John had taught his disciples.
So they figured since John had taught his disciples prayer, then Jesus should teach them a prayer, right?
You're reverberating.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking
it didn't get
I
it.
didn't do it today. No.
Try it one more time. There you go. You got it. Sorry. All right. So they figured that they should have a prayer like John's apostles had, and that they could teach the people. All right. Jesus taught the 12 always to pray in secret, to go off by themselves amid the quiet surroundings of nature and go in their rooms and shut the doors when they engage in prayer. That way they wouldn't be interrupted, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember last Tuesday where we briefly discussed the public prayer?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He just said you should not do that.
Yeah, that's where I referenced it through to last week, Gary. That's where it came from.
You've
Okay.
been backed up.
Yeah. So sometimes I say something right every now and then.
You've got a pretty good score.
It
It does, definitely does.
All right. Pam, would you take the next one?
Yeah. After Jesus' death and ascension to the Father, it became the practice of many believers to finish this so-called Lord's Prayer by the addition of, "In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ." Still, later on, two lines were lost in copying, and there was added to this prayer an extra clause reading, "For yours the kingdom and the power and the glory forevermore."
It sounds Catholic.
It does.
Yeah.
It kind of should be assumed that is the case, right? You're talking to God, so it is his kingdom and it is his power and it is his glory. It's not ours.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Rodney, would you do the next one?
Jesus gave the apostles the prayer in collective form as they had prayed it in the Nazareth home. He never taught a formal, personal prayer, only group, family, or social petitions, and he never volunteered to do that.
He never volunteered to do that because he felt like the communication with God
It's
was
personal.
Personal.
that's right,
Yeah.
very personal. The most personal thing you can do. Okay. Gary, here's another short one for you.
See, Rodney, you're the new Gary. Jesus taught that effective prayer must be unselfish, not alone for yourself, believing according to faith, sincere, honest of heart, intelligent according to light, trustful in submission to the Father's all-wise will.
Okay. So was the prayer that Jesus taught them all of these things?
Yes.
It was, wasn't it? Okay. And these are the things, these are our checkpoints when we get ready to pray to God. All these things should be the case. Now, the very first one is the toughest, is it not?
Yeah, well, he taught that to pray for other people and especially your enemies.
That's right. That's right. But that's the one we had the hardest time to. The rest of them we can learn how to do over time if we try to. Okay, Diane.
When Jesus spent whole nights on the mountain in prayer, it was mainly for his disciples, particularly for the 12. The master prayed very little for himself, although he engaged in much worship of the nature of understanding communion with his paradise Father.
Forgot to unmute again. Okay, so he prayed mostly for his apostles and others, even in his worship and communication with the Father. Okay, more about prayer. Pam, are you still there? Did you leave us?
Yeah. Sorry,
That's all right. Let me come back to you.
I'm
No.
here.
Okay.
4, more about prayer. For days after the discourse on prayer, the apostles continued to ask the Master questions regarding this all important and worshipful practice. Jesus' instructions to the apostles during these days regarding prayer and worship may be summarized and restated in modern phraseology as follows.
Did you notice the statement of
Modern day.
modern day phraseology?
Yeah.
So you can't take this stuff as literal every single word. In other words, you can't take it like the Baptists do, that this is the word of God and it came straight from God, right? This is a summary of it or a rephrasing of what Jesus says.
Maybe
Okay.
we should point out modern means 100 years ago.
100, that's right. They considered that modern. Now we'd think it was ancient history. Okay.
Mm.
So, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. The earnest and the long and repetition of any petition, when such a prayer is the sincere expression of a child of God and is uttered in faith, no matter how ill advised or impossible of direct answer, never fails to expand the soul's capacity for spiritual receptivity.
And that's the whole purpose of prayer, isn't it? The spiritual receptivity. And we used to teach when I was a Baptist, there's 3 answers to prayer. You know what that is? Yes, no, and wait. All right. Here we go. Gary, would you take the next one?
Okay. In all praying, remember that worship's, we start over. In the all praying, remember that sun worship is a gift.
Sonship.
Sonship. Yeah, I said, what?
That's it.
Where did you get that from?
I don't know why I messed up, but anyway, I did.
Okay.
No child has aught to do with earning the status of son or daughter. The earth child comes into being by the will of its parents. Even so, the child of God comes into grace and the new life of the Spirit by the will of the Father in heaven. Therefore must the kingdom of heaven, divine sonship, be received as by a little child. You earn righteousness, progressive character development, but you receive sonship by grace and through faith.
Okay. It's interesting, y'all. I heard something yesterday when I was watching a YouTube video, and the guy was talking about how AI is writing all these things for posts and stuff like that on the internet. And one of the things they were talking about in this video that you can identify AI writing it is these dashes here. You see this on the screen?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're called M dashes. All right. And there's a keystroke on an Apple computer, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but you can make that character come up when you're writing on an Apple computer. But as far as I know, I don't know of the keystrokes for a Windows-based computer. But this function of this type of charactership went out of vogue in about the 50s. So they stopped using it, and that's why it's not on the typewriters. Did y'all know that?
Really?
Well, it's on my typewriter.
No, it's totally different. The one on your typewriter is a dash, or if you
Oh,
put it in caps, it's an underline, underscore.
correct.
Hmm.
Okay, the underscore looks like it, but it's not in the center like this. It's a
Hmm.
different character.
Hmm.
But y'all didn't know that, did you?
No.
No, but
The interesting part, though, is when this book was written, there are these M dashes throughout the entire Urantia book.
interesting.
Yeah. And so if anyone started reading this Urantia book today
Oh.
and listened to all this stuff that people are putting out about whether something is written by AI or whether it's written by a human being, they have assumed that if it has this dash in it anywhere, that it's written by AI,
Mm.
just to let y'all know. So you have to be careful about who you listen to about anything, because I can tell you from personal experiences, these things are throughout all of the Urantia book.
Yes, they are.
Okay. So just let y'all know that.
Hmm.
All right. Let's go back to this prayer. This says, remember that sonship is a gift. What is he saying here? That all of the things you received as a child of God is a gift from God the Father. And it hasn't anything to do with whether you've got any status as a son or daughter whatsoever. Okay. They're gifts from God, and it's not because you're a good child of God or a good son or a good daughter. It's because it's the grace of God and the willingness of the Father in heaven to bestow good things on his own children. All right. And that's why he says here, the kingdom of heaven or the divine sonship must be received as a little child. What's he saying? In essence, he's saying that these gifts that God give us, we have to take as almost like a gift from Santa Claus, right? I say that again,
Well,
because they're gifts from God that we do not earn. They're gifts because of the love of God. Isn't that interesting?
mm,
But he says you can earn what?
righteous.
Righteousness, progressive character development, and you can receive these things through our own sonship or daughtership by grace and faith. Be humble and have faith, and these things will be bestowed on you naturally. Okay?
Hey, Roger,
Yeah,
if you don't mind, could you go back to the slide before this one?
sure. This one?
Yeah, I want to explain uh, down the last sentence, never fails to expand the soul's capacity. Uh, it would be the same as if you upgraded your computer and put a bigger hard drive in it.
Yeah.
You would have
Mhm.
more room.
Yeah, your spiritual receptivity, your capacity for that spiritual receptivity grows larger, in other words, is what you're saying.
Correct. And then for spiritual receptivity, it would be similar to raising your antenna up a little bit higher
Yeah, to catch more,
to
right?
catch more.
To
Yeah.
to receive more. And it's kind of funny because you think about it, the thought adjuster's job, this is exactly what he does, doesn't he?
Mhm.
He takes our normal material life and turns it into a spiritual receptive entity that's going to benefit us through eternity, not just our material life, right?
Right.
Helps us grow and grow and grow and grow. All right, let's go on to the next one. Let's see who was up next. Now I've lost my place. Who just read? Pam did, didn't she?
No,
Think so.
Huh?
no.
Are you up, Rodney?
Maybe I am.
I think you are.
Okay. Prayer led Jesus up to the super communion of his soul with the supreme rulers of the universe of universes. Prayer will lead the mortals of earth up to the communion of true worship. The soul's spiritual capacity for receptivity determines the quantity of heavenly blessings, which can be personally appropriated and consciously realized as an answer to prayer.
So that's a pretty good benefit, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Increase the soul's reset capacity for receptivity here, right? For the quantity of heavenly blessings. I'd say that's pretty good any way you look at it. All right. Gary, will you take the next one?
Prayer and its associated worship is a technique of detachment from the daily routine of life, from the monotonous grind of material existence. It is an avenue of approach to spiritualized self-realization and individuality of intellectual and religious attainment.
Can't beat that, can you? It detaches you from the daily life and the grind of material existence, makes our life better.
I
Right?
almost said you should go into a meditative state.
Yeah.
Prayer is an antidote for harmful introspection. At least prayer, as the master taught it, is such a benefit ministry to the soul. Jesus consistently employed the beneficial influence of prayer for one's fellows. The master usually, excuse me, the master usually prayed in the plural, not in the singular. Only in the great crisis of his earth life did Jesus ever pray for himself.
Yeah.
So Jesus prayed for everyone else, very seldom prayed for himself. So it's this prayer is supposed to be the prayer is supposed to be an antidote for harmful self-introspection. And it's an antidote for what? The me syndrome. Okay?
Mm.
Looking too much inside, not at others. Prayer is the breath of the spirit life in the midst of the material civilization of the races of mankind. Worship is salvation for the pleasure-seeking generations of mortals. Boy, that's pretty important, isn't it? So
Mm.
worship replaces the pleasure-seeking of our lives as mortals. All right. Pam, would you take the next one?
As prayer may be likened to recharging the spiritual batteries of the soul, so worship may be compared to the act of tuning in to the soul to catch the universe broadcasts of the infinite spirit of the universal Father.
That's exactly what
Mm.
Rodney was just talking about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Prayer is the sincere and longing look of the child to its spirit father. It is a psychologic process of exchanging the human will for the divine will. Prayer is a part of the divine plan for making over that which is into that which ought to be.
That's why we say not my will, but his will be done, right? It's
Mm.
changing our will until the will of the Father. Now, Gary.
Okay. One of the reasons why Peter, James, and John, who so often accompanied Jesus on his long night vigils, never heard Jesus pray was because their master so rarely uttered his prayers as spoken words. Practically all of Jesus's praying was done in the spirit and in the heart, silently.
And that's probably the thing that we should get in the habit of doing ourselves. One more paragraph and we'll quit for tonight here. Diane.
Of all the apostles, Peter and James came the nearest to comprehending the Master's teaching about prayer and worship.
Okay, and we're going to quit there for the night. We're going to come back to 5 other forms of prayer next time, which will be Tuesday, right? And in the meantime, I don't even have our prayer of acceptance up here. Let me bring it up. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. And let's see here. Rodney, would you like to do our prayer of acceptance tonight?
Sure. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith, I became a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nebadon, is Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
And that should help us understand that prayer, that prayer tonight, what we learned tonight, shouldn't it?
Yes.
Right? That it is just the prayer of acceptance for new people. Okay, let's quit there. And thank y'all for coming. Thanks everyone at home for coming to see us. And we will plan on seeing everybody Tuesday, since this is Thursday, right?
Mhm.
Right.
All right.
And happy Halloween.
And have a happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. All right.
Love you guys. Thank you, Roger.
Love
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks,
Enjoyed
Roger.
it. See everybody next time. Stay safe this week, especially with Halloween tomorrow. Okay. Stay safe.